Welcome to another episode of Clinic Success Secrets, the podcast where we uncover the strategies and insights that drive clinic growth and elevate patient care. I'm your host, Tomas O'Dwyer, founder of Clinic Success Partners, a medical digital marketing agency dedicated to helping clinics serve more patients and achieve the success that they deserve. Today, it is my great honor to be joined by the varied and multidisciplinary entrepreneur that is Kevin Meter, an international healthcare consultant, pricing strategy expert, and founder of MC Biopharma. Kevin has a remarkable background, starting off with, as he said, humble beginnings in Iowa and traveling all around the world, bringing his own sort of red pill ideology and an approach to healthcare, ranging from oncology to biotech and medical device innovations, leading projects that have redefined patient care through specialized offsite clinics and holistic treatment models. His unique perspective spans global markets from the US to India and Israel, making him a pioneer in adapting healthcare innovations across cultures and regulations. Kevin, it's an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure to join you. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of your series. I've read a lot about it and I'm very impressed. So this is an honor.
And listen, I appreciate it. And for anyone listening, you take notes basically, because Kevin has a very diverse background. But before we get into that, would you mind rehashing, I suppose, your own journey? I know there's a lot in it, but take us from the start and what brought you to where you are today, for anyone listening.
Sure, no, it's my pleasure. I'll give you the abridged version since it's like you said, it's been a few stops. But I actually started out in healthcare in the insurance industry in the United States, and it's a very challenging profession. And after a while, I decided I wanted to get onto the healthcare side because if I saw all the things I saw, and I thought there's got to be a way to bridge between the way people are being treated and the way that people are being helped by different companies, and as well as the clinical community. And with that, I started one of my first positions in healthcare. I was in home infusion therapy at the time, a pretty revolutionary step in the U.S. market because it was taking high-end, sophisticated types of care like chemotherapy and things along those lines into the home care setting, which was a whole new market for a lot of people. So I did that for several years, and then I moved into pharmaceuticals, working for Pfizer, as well as Merck in the vaccine division. So I went from medications to vaccines, from solutions to preventive measures. And then after that, I spent a couple of years in a couple of biotech companies. And then most recently, before I left the industry completely, I was with a company called Certex, which is a very specific medical device company, which creates almost a one-of-a-kind product, which is where I got into the clinic experience that we'll talk about today.
So with that being said, when you started off, I mean, obviously there's an incredibly broad range that you touched on. Was there a particular catalyst or aha moment that made you think, right, the way the style of healthcare that you were initially working with wasn't aligned with your own opinion of how it should be? Was there a particular moment that triggered that insight?
I think it does almost go back to a long time ago when I was in healthcare insurance, which is a completely different animal than being in healthcare. But what I saw was a lot of issues with people who couldn't afford healthcare, or that they had problems with certain types of healthcare delivery, and there was not a lot of flexibility in the system, as we call it. And people were either getting insufficient care, or didn't have access to care, or if they went into care, a lot of it was hospital-based at that time. So if it was hospital-based, people just got put in and put out quickly. And I thought the word I'm thinking about, there's a human touch that's missing here. And I know the United States is a big country, so there's a lot of people with a lot of issues. But the fact of the matter is that, it can be delivered more efficiently, as well as a better experience for the patient. Because, if you're at a certain level of healthcare need, you're scared to death. This is a very stressful moment for a lot of people. And how could we help them do something better? And when I got into pharmaceuticals, the machine slowly turned as I saw an adaptation of different ways of delivering, different ways of partnering with providers. And to me, that was it was great, but could we go faster? Could we do things differently? And, one person can't change the world, but, I gave it a lot of shots. And this most recent experience, I think, is kind of been my most favorite, so to speak, because I learned a lot and I did see a lot of, a lot of good outcomes.
I love that. And I think we've said this before on previous conversations. I always say maybe one person. You don't need to necessarily impact a million people, although it's a great ambition. But potentially that one you can impact one person, and that person could be the person to impact a million people. So it really is a case of the butterfly effect. So I think aggressive action and the right intention, it's only going to be a net positive in the grand scheme of things.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So my thoughts are, I mean, number one, I want to hear about how you blended these different modalities, these different, you know, um, areas that are often separated. You worked with everything from oncology to chiropractic, medical, and holistic, integrative care. You name it. When blending these together, what sort of challenges do you face? And was there pushback, and how do you overcome that?
Well, I think, when I first got into pharmaceuticals, it was much more transactional. We sold a product, somebody paid for it. That was it. We were so, distanced from, feet on the ground, so to speak, that you didn't really realize it. But then when I got into home infusion, where it's very patient intensive and it's very personally intensive, because in my work, I dealt with a lot of insurance companies getting the products paid for, but I also worked with our clinical team, and our clinical team would go out. I would be with the nurses, and we would meet patients in their homes. The patients were never one picture. It was either an older person, it could have been children, could have been somebody with a terminal disease. Actually, I started a lot of this work during the AIDS crisis in the late '80s, and those people, it really touched me, which said, they're really looking for something to help them come through things, and when they see somebody come from a pharmaceutical company, they're thinking, "Do you have what I need?" And I can't always promise that, but maybe I could promise, or I could work with them to say, we're going to work our best together and we're going to help possibly find an answer. And I think at that point I went from transitional from like I said, I first got into pharma. It was just a transaction. We made products, we sold contracts, we delivered products. It was pretty straightforward. But then when I had the privilege, I think about at this point, to be involved directly with patients, to be actually face to face with patients and hear their story, now it's becoming very human and very personal. And I thought, a lot of these people don't have a chance, and they're looking at you for an answer. And if you don't have an answer, you have to tell them, I can help you. And if I can't help you, help me help somebody that can help you, that type of thing. And it really resonated. And as every experience I had after that, I was always involved, even though I was doing the contracts and that type of thing. Always involved. I insisted I always be involved with the clinical team, with the field nurses, that we would work with the patients, I'd go to patient association meetings, which are a huge organization, excuse me, in the United States. But these are the people that are being affected by your work. And that feeling never left me, because I thought, I can name people I know going through similar journeys. And what does this mean to them? Family members, everything. And so when that happened, it just changed my perspective. And when I first started doing consulting, we were living in Europe, so I did a lot of work around Europe as well as into the excuse me, to Southern Asia as well as Israel. And I went to India and I saw, so much need for opportunity to help people that were just had nothing. And I saw so many people working to help them, and I thought, maybe we can help bring something to this country. And I actually partnered with a company called the Umesh Modi Companies, which is a conglomerate in India, but it's run by Mr. Umesh Modi. This is his company. And he came and partnered with us. He said, I want to bring technology and healthcare of the highest scale to my country. And so I worked with him to set up a couple of partnerships where European companies, both medical technology as well as medical products, he was able to create joint ventures. And again, just taking another baby step that maybe helped somebody along the way. And those types of things that really affected me. And I think, I always made it my promise to myself, make sure you're always have their finger on the pulse of the patient population of the group you serve, because doing a transactional business in healthcare to me is not acceptable. This is where we need to be. So it's always a case of, what is this doing for the patient? And as a non-clinical person in a clinical company, I didn't have a lot of opportunity to change, the care, if you will, but I had a lot of opportunity to maybe just reflect and bring messages back to senior management, which may help.
I love it. I have so many thoughts on that, and what comes to mind to me is, I mean, there's something I say. I've probably said this to you 2 or 3 times. I say this very often, but everything in life boils down to the quality of our relationships. Both with ourselves and others, and you can't have the latter without the former. And fundamentally, if you're doing something that doesn't align with your values, it is going to wear on you. And and as another as another podcast guest of ours said, you take care of the patients, the revenue will look after itself. And I think that's really what I'm hearing here. And I know I'm throwing comparison after comparison, but what I love about your approach, that what I find very, very refreshing, is we find this with our clients, with clinic success partners, and podcast guests that I resonate with most, and that is viewing the human organism as an actual entity, as someone we actually care about, as opposed to a system of siloed systems, basically. And then the you said something that I think is very powerful, and it reminds me of a speech by Steve Jobs. Have I said this to you before? I've mentioned this before. So Steve Jobs was basically giving a speech one day, and someone in the crowd tried to outsmart him, basically, tried to put him on the spot. And he said, why is the iPhone built on a certain programming language? Trying to, bamboozle him, basically. And Steve Jobs paused, and he said something that reminds me a lot of what you just said. And that was, I find what you need to do is begin what the end customer or recipient needs and work backwards to the technology. Because when you try and brute force the other way around, it never works. And that stuck with me. I think it's very appropriate for both tech, marketing, but also healthcare in general. Begin with the ending in mind.
No, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I was proud to be a part of companies that did take that extra step. I mean, it's a few years ago, it wasn't as common. I mean, work with companies that, made products that served AIDS patients. When I worked for Pharma, the German company, we had a hematology division, and it was the hematology world was just turned upside down. Excuse me, when AIDS became so rampant in the late '80s, we dealt with hemophiliacs. That was our target population, and 50% of the hemophiliac population in the United States was killed because of AIDS, and because of that, yeah, it was unbelievable. And they started the Ryan White Foundation. You probably have heard of it. It's the AIDS Patient Coalition in the U.S. And they are very, very, very proactive. And we partnered with them. How can we support? How can we do these things? And they go to Capitol Hill every year to make sure that everything comes through. But you see that kind of effect on the population of people who already have a pretty challenging position. But things came together, and because of that, hemophiliacs can live a normal lifespan. They had different products were created, and it's good to see the reaction, not just like, oh my gosh, this is happening, but how about we make something, we build in standards, we build in safety regulations, and we support the patient groups, to see that impact over years is truly mindful of why we're here. Because I know certain companies. I worked at Merck, made a product called, I can't think of the name of the product, but it was a product for river blindness, which is a disease that you can pick up in the water in Africa, and it causes blindness. It's just, I mean, they're not just calling it blindness because that's the name, but it does cause blindness.
Yeah.
Merck has, since I worked there years ago, they have created a product that treats river blindness, and they provide all the product for free. And the fact that I used to work with Jimmy Carter and his charity to give them the product, and they would bring it to Africa. But for years, they provided the product for free. And to me, that's where we should be, thinking about people, thinking about what it does. There's no other ends or means to helping people other than just helping them. And if it means delivering products, delivering care, delivering support, do everything you can.
I love that. It's a very altruistic approach, but again, give everything. Karma, basically. Things come if you just genuinely have the right intention, which I think is very clear with you. So, what I want to say is, when again you started off your certain outlooks on healthcare, how things should be done. You've alluded several times that recent ventures have been particularly successful and aligned. you know, right, as at the time of us recording this, it's the end of 2024.
Right.
What does your current philosophy look like in terms of healthcare? Um, yeah, and how has it evolved recently, and how have your business ventures recently, um, you know, been influenced by that?
It's a, it's a it is a, long distance travel, if you will, to this point. But, I think it does create an evolution of your thinking. And, now that I'm back out doing consulting, I've had the luxury again. I find most of the work I do now is a luxury just because I enjoy it so much. But the fact of the matter is that, I've gone from walking in the door in the first healthcare job where it was just, like I said, just transactional, sell the product, get the bills paid. But now there's so much more available. And I think there's been a maturation process in the American pharmaceutical industry. Even a lot of people don't like the pharmaceutical industry in the US, and they have their reasons. But I think what you have to think about too is see how they've done business in the past and see how they do business now. Much more patient focused, patient support, much less of the extraneous stuff of just trying to buy business, those types of things. And because of that, I'm happy to see that shift towards the patient. And like I said, I felt that very early on. We're useless if we're not helping people. And because of that, I'm starting to see that shift. Of course, I'm a very impatient person, so I wish it would go faster and wish they'd listen to all my great ideas. But the fact of the matter is that um, things take time to turn. But I can start to see a more of an outreach, a more proactive approach by maybe the insurers to go into value-based care, which means paying for outcomes versus just service, whatever that means. And so I'm taking my breath to see what can I do to help in this environment, because I want to be there when to help people to identify options for better care, better access. Access is so critical. Every country that I talk about in my CV, access is an issue. And a lot of countries, people don't get care because they don't have access or they don't have so I still want to continue to fight in that direction. But you have to trying to work inside the system to help companies understand the opportunity to do these things versus not doing them and what that means to everybody. So I don't know if I can save the world, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Love that. I'm not sure if I can say the word, but I'm going to give it a shot. I, I, I like that. I want that. I want that. I want that printed on a wall somewhere. I love that. That's that's a powerful sentence. I love that.
Well, you can't do everything, but you can, like you said, every action maybe influence somebody else, and maybe they can take it forward. And that's
Yeah,
where I think we can do the most good as individuals.
yeah. I think it reminds me of again, I'm giving a lot of metaphors here, but I tend to do that. But there's a metaphor allegory. I always get mixed up. But do you ever hear the story of the little girl who's on the beach with the starfish? Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so. I don't know. You seem to know a lot of stories. That's good.
I heard a lot of stories. I spend way too much time reading books. But this is one I heard when I was a child. But there's a little girl walking on a beach, and it was surrounded. It was swarmed with thousands and thousands of starfish. It was hot outside, and the starfish were drying. So she started. The tide was out, so she started throwing them back in the water. And she was doing this for quite a while. And an older gentleman walked by and said, you can't save them all. And she said, I know. But she picked up a starfish. She threw it back in. She said, but I can help that one. She picked
Yeah,
up another one. She said, I can help that one. That's really what it's about.
yeah.
Do what you can, and
No, it's true. It's true.
it's a
It's
positive.
taking a step. But not to throw another metaphor out there, but it was one of the quotes I always try to live by is the longest journey begins with the first step. I mean, that's an old saying, but it just seems more true all the time, which is if we do one thing, then another thing, and another thing. If you try to do everything at once, you're just going to get frustrated. But if you can think in your head where I want to, think about the ends as, what's my goal? How am I going to get there? But I'm going to do it in a step way that moves forward. Maybe slower one day, maybe faster the next day, but it's forward. And that's what's important.
Exactly. There's another metaphor upon a metaphor, but I think, and I'll cut off the metaphors for a bit. But I heard a thing recently that basically the beautiful irony, the tragic irony of life is that it's made to be lived forward, but it only makes sense when you look back. Because it's only when you look back, you make, because if you look at your career or the work that you've done, for someone on the outside, they're thinking, wow, that's incredible. Where do you even go? But I have no doubt that when you're going through that, and you still are, you're just thinking, okay, do I go left or do I go right? What's the best
Oh, yeah.
next steps? Just keep going.
There's not a lot of roadmaps out there either because it's, we're living in it seems like we're always living in interesting times, as they say, but it's certainly, things are changing quickly. And if you just hang on, let somebody else take you where they want you to go, then you're not going to get anywhere. And that's what you got to keep in mind.
Yeah. And if you want to do anything groundbreaking, there's not going to be a roadmap there by definition. Otherwise, it wouldn't be innovative.
No, that's true. That's true. If somebody says they have one, don't run away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, the solution would be there. And with the consulting work that you do today, Kevin, what are the main areas that you tend to focus on, and what are sort of the key um, issues that healthcare business owners tend to have that you tend to help with?
It's interesting. I've got, my background, I worked with, I mentioned a company called Octapharma, which is a Swiss German company that does very high end hematology, immune globulin, different products. And I'm getting a lot of questions, if you will, entrees from different companies. A lot of them, it turns out, are investment firms. They're trying to do an analysis of markets that are growing. And one of the biggest markets I'm dealing with is this immune globulin called IVIG, because it's turning out to be, it's funny, the product has been around in some form for years, but as people dig into it and people start doing patient testing and different disease states testing, they keep uncovering new uses for the product. I think it's up to 17 indications now, which is, that's unheard of for any products. There's like 8 or 9 products on the market, all chemically pretty similar, but it's becoming something that is being recognized as very basic, very helpful, and very flexible in its use. And all of a sudden, I'm actually glad to see the investment going into that market because it's a great product and has the opportunity. But, to answer your question, I'm seeing a lot of interest by companies on new areas of expanding indications for current products or introducing products into the marketplace that may compete with current products. So it's gotten very commercial in the last couple projects I did, which is just tell us what this is, what's the future of the marketplace. And knowing what these products can do, I encourage them to, if you want to get in there and compete and bring out a new indication or a new way of delivering the product or a new technology, how the product can be applied, I'll give you all the information you need to, let's make it happen. We'll let you make it happen and make wise decisions because it's exciting to see the investment going into, different ways of doing things, and better ways of doing things, and more effective ways of doing things. So that's where currently I'm getting a lot of that right now. So to me, that tells me next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of activity with new products and new indications and things that will, hopefully bring different solutions to people that probably didn't have solutions.
And with that, you obviously alluded to, new treatments, new, suppose, paradigms. What are some upcoming trends and technologies and treatments and so on, frameworks, if you want, that you be on the rise for healthcare over the next few years?
I think the big thing is, we were talking the other day about my work with a medical technology company in the US, which is actually this company started in Australia and was moved to the US in the 90s. And it's a technology, and this I think is kind of like a poster child for a lot of stuff that's going on. It's a technology that's incredibly important, incredibly effective. It's the I guess the word is infusion through a catheter into tumors in the liver that were previously untouchable. So people they would get metastatic colorectal cancer, and there would be metastases to the liver, which is usually a very long-term, painful, inevitable decline. But what the technology does is now they're able to actually put radioactive materials directly into the tumors, which shrinks them to a point where they can be excised through surgery, which 15 years ago was not possible. And so people who, I spoke before about dealing with or working with patient groups, but that was one of the most interesting groups I met because these are people who were told, you've got 6 months. And that was 20 years ago. and now they had that treatment, or they had the treatment like 10 years ago or whatever it was. But the fact of the matter is they were told they had something that was not curable or not treatable, and they went to the new technology, and they're still here, and they're still talking, they're still moving, they're still living. And when I see things like that, I think, how can we get this more accessible? And I think that's where, a lot of my work is now, which is looking at helping organizations or thinking about access. How can we get more accessible? Because patients are, difficult to work with when they're in that, if I'm in that, if I'm ever in that time, that frame of mind, of course, I'm just going to be like, I can't think clearly. And a lot of it, what we've done, what we did was we brought the technology into a different venue, if you will. A lot of technologies, when they first start, are based in the hospital, and hospitals are expensive. Treatment is expensive, and a lot of people think, I don't know if I can afford this. And that's a terrible thing to have to say, because at least in the U.S. market, a lot of the care, you're going to be part of the payment. So if you have a $20,000 bill, you may end up having to pay $5,000 out of your pocket. And, seeing people thinking twice about getting possible life-saving treatments, that to me is a critical issue. And one of the things we worked on and actually launched after some bumps in the road was an outpatient program, basically outpatient in doctors' offices, to deliver the same infusion of the same product that hospitals were only doing then. And I mean, I told you the story the other day, was, a lot of bumpy roads, a lot of lessons learned the hard way. But we always knew it was the right thing to do, because the doctors and the patients were both saying, yes, 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 if you can make this happen. And because of that, patients were able to go to an outpatient clinic. It was more convenient, it was less expensive, it was less intimidating. You go to a hospital for cancer treatment in the U.S. or any other country, and you're pretty well, you're pretty well shook up. And so this is an opportunity we had to partner with physicians, to partner with caregivers, to take it out, make it more accessible, make it more affordable, make it less intimidating. And the fact of the matter is that once we did the basic structure, which was, here's a doctor's office, they have a little surgical suite inside their office, that this can be performed, it took off. But now we're looking at models. How do we make this into a true patient experience care clinic? And when I say true patient experience, I mean social services, patient support, clinical follow-up, everything that, a patient should be able to have. And the model's morphing truly into a suite of oncology, metastatic colorectal cancer care, which previously, like I said, had just been surgery in and out of the hospital. But now it's a whole holistic approach to, working with the patients, working with their families, to not just provide the care, provide the support, provide guidance, provide other services. Some of the places are giving services to patients that, quality of life care. We'll get you a homemaker. We'll get you somebody to come and do your things at home. And it transcends what, care used to be in the country for this kind of cancer, which was scary, frightening, intimidating. And now it's become, we're going to be wholly involved in your patient journey. And we'll do everything to help you, from care to, like I said, support, even transportation programs that set them up to get doctors. I mean, it's just a whole different model of what was done in the past. And the response has been fantastic. But after about 2 years of wrestling with the legal people, we got to figure it out. But it was a good lesson to learn about how to do a project like that without getting so many bumps. Excuse me.
I love the fact that you're not excluding the mental component, the emotional component,
No, it's critical.
of this entire thing. Because as you said, it's not just affecting them; it's affecting the family, and no person's an island. And ultimately, people's biggest driving force is going to be hope. And hope goes hand in hand with having good relationships to look forward to. So I love the fact that component, that essential component, isn't being ignored, because, like I said, it all boils down to relationships. But fast forward to 10 years from now, it's 2035. There's flying cars, and we've populated Mars. And Kevin Meter has been working like crazy on this mission. What would healthcare look like 10 years from now? You keep doubling down on this. Is that the envisioned, or are there other areas that you think you'd like to see improvements in?
I think, one of the, and I'll speak a little bit more towards the American market just because that's my most recent experience. And I think it kind of a lot of the stuff transcends borders. And I think, one of the issues we see, I just talked about the oncology clinic, which has morphed from a different site of service to a complete holistic approach to managing the patient's care and things along those lines. There are other disease states that are just as destructive and just as effective on patients that, given the opportunity to truly react and be proactive in building care programs for them, we could also affect. I mean, you look at, Western world, heart disease is a terrible situation. We talk about cancer. It's being able to take out more. I don't know. This is almost like an intangible, but a more personalized approach, which is, they talk about, personalized approach to medicine, doing genetic testing and all those things, which is great. And there's going to be a lot of great technology coming down the pike. You can see it right now. But what are we going to do with that technology? If we're just going to plug it back into the same model and just tell somebody to get another test, you get another test, that doesn't create a mindset of, like you called it, hope. It creates a mindset of, I'm just like a human pincushion as they keep pushing me through all these tests. So I think the component, this, if you call it the socio-medical component, that's a word I just made up, but it's,
It
taking
works.
the
I'm sticking
patient,
with it. I'm taking it.
the, um, the whole patient system of individualized care, a more outreach. I look at the European models. I mean, I'm in Spain and I see all the programs around here that support the elderly, that support the chronically ill, and they're much more inclusive of, like I said, the patient services, the patient's family, patient support. And, I get, the United States is a big country. It's 330 million people. I don't know if you can do it for 330 million people, but you can sure give it a shot. Because right now there's a lot of, people going through a lot of things that, if they had that social network, if they had that, that background, if they had better information about their care, if they had better decisions in their care, that brings into a more, it sounds like it's almost kind of fluffy to say, you could be better involved with. The fact of the matter is people that think you're bringing me into the care process and you're working with me, that'll create a better, more effective model. So 10 years from now, will they cure certain diseases? Probably. But the opportunity to, the way they deliver them and the way that they're provided and the way that people are, I mean, right now there's, I think like 25, 30 million people in the US have no insurance, none. And, these people are going to miss care. So how do we take care of that? I can't just say, well, that's their fault. That doesn't work. And how do we help that? How do we build that access? And I like, the dreamer in me thinks there's no access issues in 10 years from now. You know, that could be not a good prediction, but I think that's where we start. And the way the model is delivered, the hospitals, not just become revenue generating sources for companies, but opportunities to take the capacities, like I said, as I mentioned in our clinic model for the chemotherapy we were delivering. It's the opportunity to have a holistic approach, and don't try to do everything in a day, but look at the disease states that are causing the most problems for families, for patients that have highest mortality rates, that have probably um, preventable stories if you are able to bring forward, ways to have better lifestyle, things along those lines. I know it's very blue sky of me to say these things, but you know, right now there's a lot of broken pieces in the U.S. system, and the little model we created for this one company in Boston that treats people around the world, it's showing promise, and it's been accepted as reimbursable by the U.S. government, by private insurance companies, and the patient experiences that we've worked on have been fantastic. Just to have somebody there and be able to understand what you're going through, and have the doctor and the patient and the family all as one team. Which, again, it's a big order, but I think a lot of the mindset has to change in the next 10 years for a lot of this stuff to happen. Which, it's either going to happen or it's not. But I can't tell myself it's not going to happen, because that'd be defeating before I even got started.
I think it will. Maybe I'm biased due to the nature of the guests that I have on, but I do think there's a big paradigm shift that's going on. I think people are sick of addressing. I think people are sick of addressing the symptoms. I think holistically, between physical health, mental health, the amount of research that's been done in everything from peptides to various regenerative medicine treatments to on the psychological and psychiatric component, research into psychedelic assisted therapy and all that. I think people really are trying to address the root, because they realize, that not medical advice. I'm not a medical professional, for the record, but you know,
Same here.
my but I think if you're trying to constantly address the symptoms and not look at the underlying lifestyle components,
Right.
the connection with other humans, it's like you're trying to make a meal and you're just adding more ingredients to offset the fact that you've added, too much salt. I better add something else, and then you end up with something very, very different to what you intended. So I think people are catching on to that based on what I can see. There's a counterculture.
No, no, I think you're right, and it's, I mean, I think the per capita expenditure in the US for healthcare is multiple times the next highest country, which I'm not even sure which that is, and it has some of the poorest outcomes. Patient mortality, stillbirths, even mothers dying during childbirth is still a thing in the US, and that should not happen. And if you look at, I mean, I'm sitting here in Spain, one of the longest lifespans in the world, and I don't see, gigantic hospitals. Maybe in Madrid there's some, but where I live,
Yeah,
it's, regional, and it's very much of a different approach. And,
yeah,
you know, when you're spending that much money and you're getting poorer results than everybody else who's spending less, why
yeah,
are you doing them? And I think you're right. I think I was watching one of the podcasts you sent to me about the gentleman who's involved with men's health. It's that opportunity to address a market and say that, you know, somebody's got to call it and say, "What, this isn't being done correctly." As to your point, there's a lot of good scientific research out there. So you're creating great tools, but if you don't know how to use the tools, then what's the point? And that I think is part of the process. It's exciting to be part of it. At the same time, you got to be able to pace yourself and be ready for frustration and get up, brush yourself off, and
yeah.
do it again.
Yeah. And on the topic of Spain, I'm currently about 2 hours south of Alicante at the time of recording this, and as you said, nobody is definitely dying of heart attacks over here. you know,
Failure.
they yeah, despite the diet of beer and chorizo, they're doing pretty well for themselves. So they're doing something right.
I mean, I know it. I think about it all the time. I think, I'm looking at how they eat and everything else, and I thought if we were in the States, they say, "Oh my gosh, you shouldn't eat the ham, you shouldn't eat the pork." I don't see health problems here like I saw in the US. I don't see obesity is not an issue. It's all in, it starts here in the head, but at the same time, the head's got to drive you in the right direction. And right, that's why I see the opportunity. It's out there, but right now
Yeah,
it's like a lot of different things flying around. You just got to catch them and put them together. So,
yeah.
if I'm one of those people that does that, I'm honored to say so. But a lot of us have to think that way.
It sounds like you're definitely on track for that. I mean, and
Mm.
would yeah, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would definitely put my money on you. But bring it back to the business development side of things, Kevin. So you've successfully scaled your healthcare business to multiple clinics. You've
Mhm.
What's interesting to me is whenever we talk to people such as yourself that have their foot in their foot in, I suppose, a myriad of different related businesses. To me, that's generally an indicator that you've managed to abstract healthcare related business to an extremely high level, which for me is that's what I nerd out about. Um, but on that topic, I suppose, what strategies have been most effective for sustainable growth across the broad range of businesses?
I think, I mean, it's funny. It goes full circle in life. When I first started in healthcare, I was in home infusion, which was, a radical step, taking chemo patients out, that type of thing. This is a long time ago. And now the most recent adventure in corporate America, I was doing something very similar, setting up infusion clinics, taking patients out of the hospital and giving them the care in an offsite. It's like, after all these years, am I doing the same thing? But I mean, it's, the important thing is, with, the clinics as they are, they need to be improved. I mean, we did everything kind of like real quick just to get everything done. But the next step, of course, is going to be making sure they're sustainable, because you get doctors involved, and doctors are, you know, they're putting out their money. They're the business owners. And so how do I work with that group to make sure that we bring it forward, that the clinics, as I come down the road and my clinic's experience goes from one end of the spectrum to the other, um, I think what we're seeing right now is the opportunity to take these to a different level. But there's a lot of things to iron out still, and that's the danger of failure. If you don't do your homework, and that's what I learned in this experience, you're going to get a very rough surprise, which is failed businesses, angry doctors. You could lose business, and that's a whole. And you bring forward a great opportunity. But at the same time, if you don't educate yourself on what you need to do and educate the product partner, if you will, you're going to end up with a big failure. And we almost did fail. I can tell you that. We almost did fail. We had a couple of doctors who, as we looked at it in retrospect, we didn't do the billing and coding information correctly. We didn't understand what CMS, the federal government of the United States, wants for different sites of service correctly. And we had doctors who were getting $150,000 bills from our company for supplying product that they hadn't been reimbursed for. So they're saying to us, you want me to pay you $250,000 for product, and I can't get paid. I followed your instructions on payment, so we had to go back to the drawing board. It was tough because we thought we did the homework, but you don't know what you don't know. And so learning the hard way was not fun. I apologize to the doctors profusely. We did what we thought we needed to do, and it worked out eventually. But the first couple months were like, I could see my phone ring. I thought, oh no.
Yeah, panic attack, the heart rate goes up.
But the thing about it is, though, is you have to make sure that whenever you think you've done enough, go get somebody to challenge everything you've done. Because, when you're sitting in your little cubicle doing this, you're thinking, yeah, so smart. I got this all figured out. And, lesson learned. But I just don't want it to be a lesson learned that creates a problem for a product, or which turns out to be a good model to get dismissed or not popular, or those types of things. So I took a few wounds, but if you're not trying, you're not going to get wounded. But if you get wounded on your way to success sometimes. And that was the
And then would you change anything? I suppose it's ruins a painful bit. I always say, you can't get wisdom without having scars. But if you wanted to avoid as many as you can, would you do it the exact same again? Would you hire mentors? Would you make sure everything's double checked by somebody else before going live? Same.
No, I think, as I said, lessons were learned the hard way. But I think the critical thing was, when you have a great idea, it's just that, it's an idea. And, if you want to be able to actually see that come to light, you have to do the work. And that's a very colloquial way of saying, if you don't know what you don't know, you have to, to your point, seek out mentors, look to partner with the people that you're working with. In other words, we should have, instead of putting the cart before the horse, we should have gone to the medical community first and said, is this, we knew it was doable off-site because of all the components, but what are the pieces and parts that you as a doctor, as the owner, because they're the ones who's taking the risk, the big risk. What is it that you are concerned about? What is it that you would need? What's type of setup? What are the logistics? What's the regulatory structure around this type of structure, organization by state? You're handling radioactive materials. We probably should have been involved with the regulatory agency a lot sooner, because the Nuclear Commission gets involved. In every state, you have to get a license. How can we help them get licenses instead of saying to them, go get a license? It's like for radioactive materials, it's not exactly a driver's license. You got a lot of strict requirements. So knowing the things that they would be, that they would probably be processed with, is something we should have known ahead of time. And I can't think of everything. To your point, get a mentor, speak to the people that are being involved. And that includes the patient groups too. What would this mean to you if you had to go to this place to get your care versus going to the hospital? What would you like to see? Because hospitals, to them, is like, it's familiar. They hated going to the hospitals because of intimidation and the cost and everything else. But if we gave you an alternative, what would it be for you? And that, we didn't do any of that stuff. And we just, in our heads, thought, there's two of us. In our heads, we thought, yeah, we can do that. This is how we need to do it. And we missed a lot of steps. And other people had to trip for us to realize that we missed those steps. So in retrospect, don't think you know everything. Even when you do think you know everything, you're obviously deluding yourself. Find out, look for precedents, and even similar precedents. Look for experts. Look for people who will be vested in what you're doing. Like I said, vested, if, they're putting their reputation, their future, their economics on the line. So they better be part of that process. What can we do? Talk to the state, talk to the regulators. And then you can get a clear picture. And then you have to gut test it. Let's set up a model and then give it to senior management, who will delightfully poke holes in it. And because of that is, there's a lot more bruises, to your point. But the end of the process, you've got a product that you don't have to come out and say, gee, I hope this works. Because that's done a lot, I think, with some companies that want to get ahead of others in the process. And that was part of the motivation, I think, when we were kind of stuck in we had bigger competitors who had much more resources and funding and things like that. And our concern was they got wind of such a opportunity for market growth that they would just, they'd throw everything at it and they'd have it in 2 seconds. So we had to get it done quick. So, be calm, but be smart and be ready to, take some hits because it's not going to be officially fixed until everybody signs off on it. And don't think of what you think it should be. Think of what everybody else needs, because I wasn't the one putting down millions of dollars to buy a clinic. I wasn't the one who was going to, bring my father, my mother, whatever, to this clinic for care, that type of thing. And don't get so full of your own thinking that you end up, forgetting about everything else, which usually I'm not guilty of that. But in this case, I guess we were so quick to jump on this because we wanted to beat the competition that, in retrospect, we rebuilt the model, which works much better now. But at the same time, that can be a foolish endeavor to try to do without a process, for lack of a better term.
And it's obviously always easy to look back with rose tinted
Oh, yeah.
glasses.
Yeah, it's tough though.
Yeah, because you sound confident now, but I can't help but imagine. I would assume imposter syndrome must have been a component while doing this, or am I wrong?
Oh no, the thing about it was that, just a little backstory on the company was hemorrhaging money for years. It wasn't just a case of, let's just do this because it's fun. There was, like such a great product. How could you lose money? But they were doing a good job of losing money, and the sales were getting hacked away at by the competition. And so before the plane crashes, so to speak, how do we get something sort of leg up? Because the pricing was not flexible. It wasn't like typical pharma where we did rebates and discounts and market share and that type of thing. Nothing. There was none of that. And our price for our product was the same exact price for the competitive product. So there's no differentiation if you're a patient. And the doctors will prefer the product that's available, the product where the most salespeople show up and give them, or the clinical people show up and give them the information. So we were at a lot of disadvantages. So that, the first thing to do is have a knee-jerk reaction and say, here's a way to fix it. Let's get involved with these people in offsite kind of facilities. But that's so dangerous because, it gives you 10 minutes of happiness with another hour of pain. And if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're just going to, eventually just grind yourself into the ground. And because of that, it was really tempting to just say, let's take the ball and run before everything just falls apart. But I think we did make it, but it's, like I said, at the same time, feel good about it now in retrospect. But at the time, it was like a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of, self-doubt, a lot of self-questioning. And you just got to keep going forward. And if you have just, to your point earlier, have a mentor. It doesn't even have to be somebody at your company. It doesn't have to be somebody in your industry. Just somebody with a brain on their shoulders that you can say, let's talk about this. This is what I'm doing. And I had a couple of those, which I was fortunate. But it's a big lesson on reading the battlefield coolly, without emotion, making your decision around how we're going to set this up and what's our end goal. What's the end? What are we trying to achieve here? And I think we're a little guilty of that too, saying, let's just do this. And then somebody would say, what are we trying to achieve? It's like, trying to get the project done, that type of stuff. And that's not really the way to do it. Set up your mission statement first and then go from there.
Yeah. And I suppose, again, there's so much good advice here. So for anybody listening, definitely make sure you're taking notes. But if you were to talk to, say, 20-something-year-old Kevin, or another healthcare entrepreneur that's looking to grow, but doesn't want to compromise their vision, do you feel that advice that you've just shared, have a stay calm, double check your work, just keep fighting forward effectively, and have a mentor, is that a fairly comprehensive breakdown? Or is there any other advice that you would give to
the thing I always tell when I work on projects to myself and with other people is, before you even, put your first foot over the starting line of the race, what is your end goal? define that end goal, and don't just say, to make the world a better place or this kind of stuff. Very clear, very concise, very measurable. So if I'm going to set up a clinic for oncology in New York City, where am I going to set, I'm going to have a whole plan about what am I going to try to achieve with this clinic in New York City, the market, the impact, the types of patients, the type of clinic. So I want to have, this is where I want to be. Now I've got to build a roadmap to get there and make sure that your end goal is, pass the test of all the people that will be affected by what you're doing. Understand it, support it, and you know what? You're going to get a lot of holes kicked in it, but that's the best thing that could happen to you because the people that are going to be involved, the people that are going to be affected. Like I did my job, I got my paycheck. These people were asking people to make investments, or asking people to make clinical and professional, professional decisions based on their career, and that's a big decision. We're asking the patients to look at new ways of getting your care. Do you feel more comfortable? So we have to create an end goal that everybody can look at and say, to get to that goal, I'm with you. Or to get to that goal, you're crazy. This is what you should be doing. And that's when then we would build our statement in front. Where are we trying to go? Where are we trying to go? And here's our end goal. So how do we fill in the middle? And what are the components? What's the action plan? What's the timeline? And how are we going to measure results? And how are we going to measure success? Those are the types of things that, you don't want to have to say, everything I do is perfect. But if you give yourself measurements and challenge yourself to certain goals, that will keep you focused, that will keep you, your eyes on the prize. It's about building. I was just talking about with the process, I would suggest building out a model because of, my own experience of jumping the gun, which, in a competitive market where you really think you've got a unique product, the temptation is just take the ball and run with it. But there's a lot of, a lot of work that will take time, that will take focus, concentration, feedback, other parties, other resources, and it will take longer. But the fact of the matter is that's where you're going to get a satisfactory, if you will, response or a satisfactory end game. And it will never go perfectly. But the more you do what I was just talking about, the less chance you have of it going more imperfectly, which like I said, we had a bit of that, but I'm thankful for the lesson. I just hope that the people I worked with and worked for were satisfied with the end result.
Nice. Love it. And again, rewinding back to today, obviously you're looking at some your own new ventures, the Unplugged Healthcast, putting a bit of content out there. What's the vision there? If you don't mind sharing, you can cut this out if you don't.
Did you say that again?
What's the vision? I know you said you want to put some content out there, yourself, your own podcast, all that kind of stuff. Is that something that you want to focus on in future, or?
No, I think so. I think it's, so we're talking about technology changing, opportunity changing, and the opportunity to be involved in something like this is invaluable because now we get to spread, you get to hear more people. You get to, I take anybody I listen to on the podcast, especially in this genre, what you're doing. To me, that's a mentor. That's somebody I can learn from. And how else, to me, to expand my reach for them to be able to, people that you're talking to that I can sit and listen to, to me, that's the way to go because there's so many good people out there. And I think a lot of us are thinking the same way. And a lot of us are maybe going up into the same kind of, issues that, being able to listen to each other, to hear each other, even if we're not in the same business, even if somebody's in a completely different field, but even different areas of medicine. To be able to have that access and be able to, whatever I learn, if somebody wants to hear it, I'm happy to bring it because, I think I've learned something, but I learned a lot from hearing, speaking with colleagues and people who are, involved in this type of medium. To me, this is one of the best inventions going forward as far as communication and spreading of, ideas because we can't spend the time to track each other down around the world. But at the same time, we have a lot of similar issues. And I love the opportunity to be involved in something like this. So I would welcome the opportunity to join the crowd, so to speak, because I think there's a lot that we can that I can listen to and I can hear and I can learn from, and hopefully I can share something with somebody else.
You definitely can. And as I said, on my end, the last hour alone, I'm definitely going to be re-listening to this a lot, and I'm going to be definitely looking for more episodes because there's a lot of wisdom that you have, and I'm looking forward.
You're too kind. You're too kind. I appreciate it. I'm glad you found me because I think this has opened my eyes to a lot of different opportunities because like I said, a lot of times when you're a consultant, you work in a vacuum because you yourself, I work independently, and I really miss the opportunity of this kind of dialogue and just camaraderie with people who are in similar positions that we can learn from each other. So to me, it's a gift, and I appreciate very much being part of it.
Yeah, I appreciate your appreciation. I said I'm looking forward to doing it again.
No, I'm always here.
Well, I'll definitely take you up on that. Where can people find out more about what you do, Kevin?
I'm building a website as we speak, but so that's not online yet because I just got back into consulting after being in corporate for a while. But certainly happy to speak to people through my email, which is mcbiopharma.gmail.com. So that's kind of a band-aid right now, but I certainly will have something online probably by the end of the year, and I'll be happy to share that with everybody. But in the meantime, I'm happy to, reach out and speak with people and likewise invite them to reach out to me.
Perfect. I'll include all of your contact details in the show notes. Some people can reach out if they want to find out more. And yeah, listen, Kevin, I've really enjoyed this. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, mine, I need to. Thank you very much for including me.
Thank you.